Alive, my search for the best ways to live. My name is Jiggy Jr., and my search has brought me here to Mr. Jayyay Neri, the president of Sunstar. Hi, and good day, Sir Jay.
Hey, good afternoon, Jiggy, and good afternoon to everyone out there.
Thank you so much for doing this, Jay. You know, one of the most beloved, if not the most beloved newspaper here in Cebu and other parts of the Philippines is, of course, Sunstar Daily. I have been reading Sunstar for practically, my entire life since my parents gave me a newspaper a long, long time ago. So Sunstar has always been in sight every single morning. Every time the newspaper boy delivers the Sunstar to our doorstep, or to the at the in between the bars of the gate. Jay, but we don't really know the story, the origin story of Sunstar and how it came to be. My mother seems to know a little bit, but I completely forgot all about it. So maybe I can get it straight from you. Jay, tell us about the origin story of Sunstar.
Well, once upon a time in the Philippines, all the newspapers outside of Metro Manila were practically mom and pop operations out of a garage. And in Cebu, that was also the case. So one day, a group of Cebuanos, including my uncle, Jesus Garcia Jr., decided that they wanted to professionalize the newspaper industry. So they came together and founded Sunstar. So Sunstar had a lot of firsts. It really innovated as far as newspapers were concerned. It was the first newspaper, for example, to hire full-time reporters. In the past, there was no such thing as a full-time reporter in Cebu. You just contributed stories. You were just a contributor. So Sunstar did that. Sunstar was the first to use the offset press as opposed to the old letter press. Sunstar was the first to use computers. Sunstar was the first newspaper in the country to have a website, even before national papers had one. So we have always prided ourselves on being at the forefront of our industry. And, so Sunstar was only partially owned by one of my uncles. But sometime after the EDSA revolution, our family obtained a majority stake in Sunstar. And we have been running it ever since. I think ever since 1987 or 6 or something like that.
So exactly what was the year in which Sunstar was born here in Cebu? And why did you guys call it Sunstar? Why did they call it Sunstar? Why is it called Sunstar? And the first question being, when was it born?
Deliver possibilities faster in Cebu with Lala Move. Let's move forward to the new normal by delivering your business or personal needs in just 55 minutes. Deliver small or big items with our motorcycles starting at 60 pesos, or four-wheel MPVs and light trucks starting at 250 pesos. Download the app now from Apple App Store or Google Play Store. Lala Move. Deliver faster.
Sunstar was born in 1983, if I'm not mistaken. There are many, to be honest with you, there are many legends why the name was Sunstar.
Legends,
I'm not sure if any of it is true.
Maybe myths. So give me one myth. Give me one myth.
Stories. Well, one myth is that one day our founding editor-in-chief, saw both the sun and the star in the same day.
Wow, okay.
Sometimes that happens in the afternoons.
Yeah.
So Sunstar was born.
Okay. That's an interesting myth. I'll take that, especially if it's coming from the president. Jay, in the long and illustrious history of Sunstar, what do you think is the most remarkable achievement of the newspaper? What do you think? If I know there are many, but if you can pick one, what do you think that is?
Well, I think that Sunstar's most remarkable achievement is that it it was, and it still is the only newspaper outside, no, of Metro Manila to really grow and to really be financially sound, financially secure, to really go international, to really have its own website. And that's something we're very proud of. And Sansa has remained fully Cebuano owned all these years. And since we started it, since our family bought into it, it has remained with the same owners ever since. So,
Jay, one
yeah,
of
we
the
have
things one of the things that
Yeah.
I've noticed in newspapers, in the newspapers, especially not just actually the local dailies, but also the national newspapers, the national they call it broadsheets, right? Is that they're getting thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. Jay, what is going on? Is the newspaper industry dead as we know it? Can you tell us the story where the newspaper industry is headed? Because it's certainly getting thinner and thinner and thinner, both national and local newspapers. What is going on?
Well-
What's happening?
Well, I think it's not just national and local, even international.
Exactly, yeah.
So, if you look at the newspaper as a traditional newspaper, then it may not be dead, but it's definitely moving towards that direction. Okay. Maybe save for the tabloids, but if you look at the newspapers which have broadsheet format, then really it is maybe on life support, shall we say? No? The trend was really going downwards, but still okay for many, including Sunstar. But then the pandemic was the last straw that would break the camel's back. So sad to say, the newspaper industry, as we know it in the traditional sense, is really not in the best of health right now. And I don't think that there's any hope of recovery in the traditional sense. No. So having said that, it means that the newspapers have to change and have to innovate. Because really, if you look at it, since time immemorial, you look at mass media, you look at, when TV came about, everybody said, well,
Radio is
radio
dead.
will die.
Yeah, yeah.
But here we are, right? So when the internet came about, newspapers will die, but we're still around, no? And so forth and so on. But things change. So the internet, I think, is really of course, it's the biggest game changer around, no? And it's available to everybody. So right now, every Tom, Dick, and Harry can actually be a reporter, write a story, post a video, etc. So the access to the public is no longer the exclusive domain of TV, radio stations, and newspapers. So we all have to innovate, and these challenging times are not only being experienced by newspapers. I'm sure also radio stations and TV stations are in the
Absolutely,
same boat. We're in a
absolutely.
very similar boat. No? So really, it's all about innovating. And as far as we're concerned, in Sunstar, really, it's not about just news or not about just the newspaper. We view ourselves as a provider of information in different platforms, be it in the newspaper, be it in form of videos, be it in social media, be it in the website, and whatever future platforms will come about. So it's really about how we can deliver information that the public wants in all the different platforms available. So it's really about finding the audience that will want the information that you deliver. So of course, different platforms necessitate different, not only different delivery, but different content. You talk about the young people, the millennials or Gen Zs who are, always online, they would want to read different things from the traditional newspaper readers. So, these things are really constantly changing, and there's no end in sight to the movement or the change.
So, like I said earlier, Jay, all of the newspapers are getting thinner and thinner and thinner by the year. Obviously, one of the reasons why it's getting thinner is the fewer advertisers. Where are those advertisers going? Are you able to capture them in your pivot to the internet, or are they completely and totally lost forever to a different perhaps a platform? What is going on? Where is advertising revenue going, especially the ones that are originally or traditionally newspaper advertisers?
Well, in this day and age, there are many different alternatives for advertisers. So advertisers are now spoiled for choice.
Mhm.
So really, everyone is competing to be the choice of the advertisers. And to get that, you must have the right audience, and you must be able to convince advertisers that you're the right vehicle, not to reach the target audience. So it's becoming more and more. Well, in one sense, the audience is expanding because you can now reach people worldwide.
All over the world.
But on the other hand, it's also becoming more niche because, for example, if you're advertising real estate, if your product is real estate, then you only want to target people who are prospective real estate buyers. No? And that is now very possible in several platforms. While there is globalization, there's also specialization.
I guess you can now specialize because your market is now 7.8 billion, right? So even a small fraction of the population will already be, I guess, enough. Jay, you mentioned earlier that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can just be, a journalist. The rise of the citizen journalist, they call it. How do you feel about the prevalence of fake news now, especially those that are on the social media platforms, in particular on Facebook, on Twitter, and sometimes, or a lot of times, in Reddit? How do you feel about them? And where does Sunstar play in all of this?
Well, first of all, fake news is something that we all have to deal with. In this day and age, it's impossible to not have fake news since everybody now has access to the internet. And also, what is the worst thing about fake news are the fake news that are intentionally made to mislead, rather than those that are just put forth by people who don't know any better. Now, what some people may not realize, and what I'm hoping that they will later realize, is that when you go to when you read something from Sunstar, for example, or for that matter, CNN or any of the other news websites, that particular news has gone through a certain amount of fact checking and verification. So that news has been sifted through, and it is usually relatively accurate. No? And there is value in that, but that is what people do not yet realize. When you talk about general news, I mean, general news is everywhere. It's free. You can Google about anything, and the news stories would come out. There's a fire here, earthquake there. You Google it, it comes out. Now, on the other hand, there are some news which are very, very clearly fake. And ironically, there have been, sad to say, I will not mention names, there have been and there are so-called mainstream media outlets who are putting fake news out there to fit their agenda, whatever that agenda is. And I'm very disappointed in that. And I can assure you that Sunstar would never, ever intentionally put out fake news. It's one thing to make a mistake. You make a mistake, if you do it in a newspaper in print, it's there for public record, and you put an erratum in the next issue or whatever. But when you make a mistake online, you can easily correct it.
Where do you distribute Sunstar now, aside from the traditional, newspapers? Where do you find Sunstar now? Can you subscribe to it using an app? Do you have a website? Are you distributed on social media, on Facebook? Where is Sunstar being distributed now, and where do people most get it from?
Okay, when you talk about Sunstar, let's divide it up into the different platforms. No, first you have Sunstar, the newspaper, together with our Visayan tabloid, Super Balita. The most challenging time was at the start of the pandemic, when everybody was locked down and nobody could go out. The biggest source of sales we had was really newsboys and newsstands, and those were all closed in the months of from mid-March to maybe June or somewhere thereabouts. So really, the circulation really dropped. No, young newsboys were not allowed on the streets, and up to now, below 15 years old are not allowed. No? So there have been challenges. So what we have done since then is we've tried to pivot, and really a lot of our distribution now is through the 7-Eleven outlets and a few bakery outlets like Julie's Bake Shop, among others, other convenience stores and gasoline stations. No? So that's where we have been distributing our print. Now, in recent months also, some newsboys, the older ones, have come back, and some of the newsstands have already opened. But it's also a challenge to send our copies, for example, for a time, there were no boats to Bohol or boats to Dumaguete. So again, those were stopped. Now they're slowly coming back, but people are still very worry about reinvesting in these routes. But having said that, an exact copy of our newspaper is available through our e-paper. It is something that you subscribe to. It's very cheap. It's something like in the vicinity of $30-something a year. Wow. And it can be shared by how many? Can be shared by, I'm not sure, 3 or 5 devices. So it really is.
Is it an app? Is it in an app form? How is that? How do you get a copy of Sunstar? Because I remember you had an event pre-COVID launching the e-paper of Sunstar, and I think you had to download the app of Sunstar, right? So it is the exact same replica of the hard copy newspaper that can be read using your mobile device. Am I correct, sir?
Yes, and not only that, when you get that app, you get already Sunstar, you get Super Balita, all at once.
How's that working out? Is that enough revenue to sort of make up for the lost sales in the hard copy newspaper?
No, not even close.
Okay.
Close, yeah.
I see a lot of Sunstar on the social media platforms, especially on Facebook. Do you have a distribution system as well on the social media platforms, and how is it distributed on Facebook?
Well, on Facebook, actually it's free.
Okay.
We put out the news for free because it's not only Sunstar. News is in general is free in Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really need to. We really cannot charge. We really cannot charge for that.
So how is it? Is it the entire newspaper on Facebook or just specific news stories?
Well, most of the news articles we put on Facebook.
Okay.
The features we don't. We might put links to our website.
Okay.
We also put some videos on Facebook. Ironically, that's the thing with Facebook. People expect something from Sunstar, but expect it for free. And they say, why didn't you dig deeper into this story? I mean, everything costs something.
Yeah.
You want the story, but you want it for free. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Not for us anyway.
Yeah. So
So
those stories that are available on Facebook are not the same stories or not the full story that you read when you buy the e-paper, or are they just teasers of a news story, or do you tell the entire story? How would you say that?
we do a little of everything.
Okay.
Sometimes we link it to the story in our website.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just like a PubMat, or something that fits in the space allotted by Facebook. It really all depends. But when we do link to our website, it links to the full story. We just try to bring people to our website from our Facebook page.
I noticed that certain international newspaper companies like New York Times, for example, they allow you to read several episodes, several issues, and then after which they ask you for subscription, right? And there are some news websites as well that are totally and completely free, in which you are exposed to the different ads. So their business model is advertising, and the other one is subscription. Have you tried both, and which do you think is more effective? Do you think that it's better to do a subscription business model, or is it better to have an avenue, a business advertising avenue or revenue stream?
Well, we've done a little of both. We are doing, in fact, a little of both.
Okay.
What's very unique with the New York Times is that they are probably the most successful newspaper in terms of subscriptions.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, if you dig deeper, you will find out that what is driving their subscriptions is not their news, not at all.
It's
It's
what?
two things. One is their crossword puzzle,
Really?
and two is the cooking videos.
Wow.
Okay, so what does that say? It tells
Interesting.
us that people are not really, people are not really after news. There's only a very targeted market who's really after news. People are after other forms of information, and that is what made the New York Times click. So that's one model that, of course, you look at and study. And with regards to we call it a paywall. When you read a few articles for free, then you have to pay. With regards to the paywall, I mean, come on, it's probably difficult to implement that in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Filipinos are known to be very prudent with their money, and maybe
You're being
don't
kind.
feel the value of news. Yes. Having said that, we are doing something. We do have a paywall, but it only will appear if you are viewing our website from outside the Philippines.
So you do have
So if you are
a website. You, aside from the app, you have a website as well.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yes.
So the website is for free, just like
The website is for free to everybody in the Philippines.
Okay.
When you are outside the Philippines, it's not. You get 10 articles a month for free. If you want more, you pay. You subscribe.
I imagine that you have a lot of editorials, right? You have a lot of what do you call those? Those that have columns, right?
Yeah,
opinion writers, right?
Yeah.
How is that? And have you because I see in other newspapers around the world that they have converted these columnists into podcasts and the news items into video news. Have you done something similar to that? Do you have a podcast version of the columnist or of the columns, and do you have a video version of the news? Because I see some videos as well on Facebook that are from Sunstar.
Okay. First of all, let me take the videos. We have a Bisaya and an English online newscast every night. Okay. We have Sunstar Tonight, I think, is the English version, and there's also a Bisaya version every night.
Okay.
I don't recall exactly what time. I think one starts at 7, one starts at 9. I'm not sure now which is which, but that is there every night. With regards to the podcast done by the opinion columnists, I mean, let's be honest. If you look at our opinion columnists and you look at how old they are, you would see the challenges that we are facing. So we are in the process of bringing in younger columnists who will be more open and capable of doing these podcasts and similar things.
You know, Bill Gates has a podcast. Barack Obama has a podcast. So these old people, they actually can still do podcasts.
Well,
but perhaps they have an armada of people to work behind them to be able to make things happen. So how do you feel about the future of newspapers or just getting news in general, Jay? How do you feel about it? Because we are, after all, in the age of information, right? And a newspaper, you know, first and foremost is information. So how do you feel about the future of newspapers, not as we know it as a piece of paper, but as a tool to get the news, as a delivery tool for the world to know about what's going on in their corner of the world?
Well, I think I think the future is bright for newspapers who can and who will innovate and will open their minds to a new business model, not only in terms of generating ads and revenues, but also of the kind of content they push and the way they will deliver the content.
Okay.
Problem is, it's difficult sometimes to change mindsets, and it simply is the most difficult to change. You know, you can always buy technology, you can invest in this, invest in that, but you cannot buy a new mindset.
Well, it takes time for mindsets to change, right? And a lot of resources as well. Jay, there are still a lot of people out there who would love to make journalism a career. Those who would love to hunt down the news, you know, as it happens, and perhaps write it down or broadcast it. There are still people out there who still love to be in the newspaper industry or in journalism in general. What is your message to all of them, all of us who would like to still be in some shape or form, be a part of a newspaper?
Well, to me, you know, the message I would give everybody is, of course, number one, you hone your skills in the different platforms available, which means writing, interviewing, doing podcasts, doing videos, even flying drones, for example. Well, they're not difficult to do anymore.
Yeah.
And also, it's very important when you start out to learn things the right way. You go to try to get experience from an establishment with credibility, whether it's a newspaper like Sunstar, a radio station like Y101, or a good TV station or whatever, because that's where you will learn the value of fact checking, and you will have to learn to balance speed with accuracy, because you know it's a race. First one out, no? First one who puts the news out wins, so to speak, unless you get burned because you shared fake news. So
Jay,
there's a right balance.
Jay, where can they catch Sunstar? Why don't you kindly repeat what you said earlier about the different ways on which they can get a copy of their favorite local daily Sunstar? Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so for if you want to buy a copy of Sunstar, the newspaper, or Sunstar Super Balita, the Visayan version, you can go to your favorite newsstand. You can go to any 7-Eleven outlet, and you can go to most convenience stores. There are some newsboys who peddle it in the streets, in places like bus stations or in the markets, but that's not yet, not yet in full force because of the IATF regulations that prevents the young newsboys from peddling on the streets. Now, aside from that, of course, there's the website and the e-paper and our social media pages.
What's the official website of Sunstar, Jay?
www.sunstar.com.ph. From there, you can link to any Sunstar around the country. Online, we cover, I think, more than 10 different locations.
How about the app? What is it available in both platforms, iOS and Android?
Yes, it's available on both platforms. You just search for Sunstar e-paper.
Okay. And before I forget, Jay, I was going to ask you this, but I completely forgot about this. There's something about touching a newspaper, compared to reading it from a digital reader, for example, a cell phone or an iPad or a PC or a laptop. And the direction of where we're going now is towards digital, right? But there's a reason why vinyl records still exist and they're still burning those vinyl records, right? Because there's something about the vinyl record that you can touch and you can see, you can smell. How do you feel about that? Do you think that a newspaper will ever disappear as we know it, like a piece of paper? Do you think it'll ever disappear, or it'll still be there for a long, long time, as long as people still want to smell the smell of ink and paper? How do you feel about that?
Well, I believe that newspapers with broadsheet formats may become very niche, and they will only exist in some, let's say, key cities. And there may be only one in every key city. Having said that, what might last a lot longer would be the tabloids.
The tabloids.
Yes, only
The
because
chismis.
their business models are different.
Okay.
The tabloids, you make money. The company makes money on every copy sold.
Yeah.
For the broadsheet format ones, we lose money on every copy sold. We need advertising support for that.
The
So
business
if the
model.
advertisers go
Yeah.
down, yes. That's why the newspapers, to answer your earlier question, that's why newspapers are getting thinner and thinner. With less advertisers, you really have to make it thinner for you to remain viable. There are only two, there are two things that you really cannot run away from in the newspaper business. No, one is the biggest cost is always paper. So if advertising is low, there are only two things you can do. You need to consume less paper. So either you print less or you print a lot but with fewer pages. In the past, all of our competitors would just print less. But now, and the others print still even less. That's why in the newspapers it's just a game of claiming, oh, I'm selling this many, but you're only actually printing 10% of that. That's been a very common practice all throughout the industry. And I'm happy to say Sunstar was never a part of that. At least Sunstar in Cebu and in Davao.
Okay, Jay, thank you so much for sharing all of that, in spite of the fact that you're very busy. Thank you so much, Jayyay Neri, the president of Sunstar. Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you, Jiggy. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Long time no see. Hope things will normalize soon.
Let's have a cup of scotch or whatever.
Yeah.
We can't show them that we're drinking it, so it has to be in a cup. Thank you so much, Jay. You take care and stay safe, okay?
Okay.
Thank
too,
you. Bye-bye.
Jigs. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Deliver possibilities faster in Cebu with Lala Move. Let's move forward to the new normal by delivering your business or personal needs in just 55 minutes. Deliver small or big items with our motorcycles starting at 60 pesos or four-wheel MPVs and light trucks starting at 250 pesos. Download the app now from Apple App Store or Google Play Store. Lala Move. Deliver faster.